Thank you, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Frontier Opening Bell. I am Bosin Amafaye, and it's a brand new month. Welcome my panelists this morning, Chima Ukadike, who is in charge of consumer goods analysis at Vetiva Capital Management, and Temple Ashaju of Frontier Africa Reporter, and one of our analysts and show anchor as well. Both of you, thank you very much. Hope you had a very nice weekend. Let's roll straight to the markets, where we finished off in the five key African exchanges that we covered on a daily basis. Nigeria market softened 0.96%. Ivorian market was better by 2.67. Egyptian top 30 index up 2.09%. Kenya was down about 0.15%. And South Africa sharply down 2% on Friday. Let's check in with East Africa, where the Uganda inflation came in over the weekend at about 3.8% for the month of February, slightly higher than the month of January, 3.7%. And KenGen, that's the Kenya's energy giant, reporting half-year revenue down nearly 40%. And Capitec is given a 30-day window to buy the shares in BOC gases of Kenya, 1.2 billion shillings. Tempo, how do you want to weigh in the East African story?
I think we talked about these BOC gases the other day. The fact that yes, they're listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange as well. In Nigeria, I think the UK stake in it is about to be exited as well, and that's about the same thing that they are also doing with Kenya here. In Kenya now, we're hearing that there will be a 30-day period. 6th of April 2021 is the deadline or closing period for this for the exit of the UK stakeholders in that company. Capitec consortium of Capitec Investments PLC is looking to buy that, which is fine. At the end of the day, I think it just explains the fact that the 65.38% stake that the UK equivalent of it, or investors have in it, will be exiting the Kenyan market. Whatever the reason is, I do not know, and I hope that before the end of this transaction period, we'll be able to get the details. And at the end of the day, we'll probably will see the same thing happening in the Nigerian markets. That leaves the business in the hands of Africans generally, and perhaps at the end of the day, they'll be able to leverage the AFCA with it, because there are some other parts of Africa that I understand really do not have access to that kind of gas. With AFCFTA, perhaps at the end of the day, with Capitec, which is also a food natural gas company, will be able to, or natural food making company, will be able to transport or better still expand into these other parts of Africa where there's need for medical gas supply, as opposed to just the natural gas that exists, and cooking gas which exists in these other parts of Africa.
Yes, thank you, Temple. We expect to hear more clarity from. We expect to get more clarity from Capitec. If you are doing such a transactions, I'm sure the rules of the market is that you provide more clarity, as it were. Let's move on to the West African space, and Chima Ukadike is angling to speak to the Nestle, Nigeria's food giant, reported a disappointing full year 2020. How did that arrive on the doorsteps of Nestle Nigeria? You give us that a bit more flesh to this bone, as it were. Revenue up just 1%. Profit after tax down to about 40 billion naira. This is very surprising for Nestle Nigeria within the Nigeria space. But of course, looking at a few other earnings, MTN Nigeria came with a bull in the eye. Revenue 15.1% for last year. Profit after tax about 0.1%. Earnings per share about the same margin. Reporting a final dividend of 590 kobo. Full year will be about 9.50 kobo per share. Says its operating profit was came in, but again a bit of higher borrowings last year, north of 540 billion by these telco giants. Depressed operating profit and its net profit, as it were. Oando says he's not agreeing with the Abuja Federal High Court ruling, saying that the ruling by the court in favor of the SEC was quote unquote misconceived, and is appealing that the cat and mouse, Tom and Jerry relationship between SEC and Oando continues. Let me allow Chima to weigh in first on Nestle. Food is everything. Let's talk about that first.
Well, food is very important, person, truly. So for Nestle, we were quite surprised by the performance, especially because we had expected to see better performance from the food giants. Although, if you look at their 9 months performance, you'll see that it was quite in line with full year performance. They had only grown 1% when we compare 9 months 20 to 9 months 19. But going into the last quarter of the year, and this was after we had all come out of lockdown and the economy was still starting to trying to get back to its feet. And if we also compare to other companies, we would see that their Q4 performances were a bit they're very good. So we had expected that Nestle as well would come out swinging in terms of revenue. However, we should say that this performance, so we know that Nestle's revenue is split into, comes from two segments. So we have the food and we have the beverage segment. Now, for the food segment, we've not seen a lot of growth. In fact, that segment has been declining, while the beverage segment has been the sole lifter of revenue. We can explain it away by saying that pandemic hit, people's incomes reduced, and people moved more to staple unpackaged foods than buying packaged foods from companies like Nestle. However, people turn more to coffee and other forms of beverages, so we can explain why why we saw that growth in beverage segment. So we had expected to see that bump in the Q4 segment as well, especially when we know that Q4 is when we have Christmas and end of year preparation, and people send a lot of hampers. And what's in hampers? Beverages, food, and the like. So we had expected that that would boost revenue for the company. However, when we go down the income statement, we also saw some things that sort of took a toll on profits. For one, we saw that OPEX declined by just about 2 billion due to reduced selling and distribution expenses. We saw that gain was kind of wiped away, going down the line to net finance expense. So due to a lot of finance FX losses, we saw that net interest expense declined or increased about 3.8 billion from a previous about 0.9 million, which was about 303% increase. And I even forgot to mention the impact that increased cost of sales had on the company. We saw that cost of sales jumped about 8%, and Nestle is not even the only company that has faced. Others may have even faced worse in terms of cost of sales. You know that the main driver, apart from inflation, we also have to look at raw material sourcing and the challenges to all that. So overall, while they declined in terms of PAT, I think when you look at it in terms of dividend payments, they still have something going for them. Although when you compare it to their last year dividend payment of 70 naira, compared to this year payments, that's total dividend, final dividend for Nestle for this year is 35 naira 50 kobo. They compared to 45 naira they offered last year. It looks like a bit of in fact, it is a bit of a decline, and we are yet to see how investors will react to that. Although we kind of think that investors will not react too badly, because it would seem that holders of Nestle are very long-term holders, and they don't really easily sway to such moves. Also, speaking
I'm not going to let go.
Okay.
for Nestle, Chima, very quickly, if a stock is trading, I'm not sure Temple is going to let go. If you're looking at a 4x4 company, that is what Nestle is about. But again, I think one of the problems with the food segment, like you rightly mentioned, is that with the number of offices closed, you know, in the office, you have the normal office, folks come around the office. There is a tea and coffee in the chairman's or the managing director's coffee. The receptionist, the secretary to the CEO is making tea and coffee, whether it is Lipton tea, whatever it is. All of this,
yes,
all of that, whether it's Milo, all of that. so all the courtesy and those events, by the way, isn't it, Temple? Those events, corporate events in which there's a breakfast briefing, and you have a whole lot of
down the drain.
Those days are gone.
Yes, they are. I totally agree with you. And So that's it. You've painted a clear picture, and that was one of the key reasons why their earnings were quite bulked this period. Again, I should add that there's been a little bit of competition in that space, in the coffee space right now. I know a couple of a particular retail company that has entered the coffee space in Nigeria, and they are really doing well. They're beginning to set up retail outlets in Oshodi area, and in some of those areas where you had some of the products of Nestle heading to before, by those guys that push the cars across Lagos. Now those guys are there. Now their prices are cheaper, and they are trying to be market friendly. So these guys are now going more for, I don't like to mention the names, but that's something that I've seen in recent times, and it tells you that competition is gradually setting into the coffee space specifically. But when it comes to other products that Nestle puts together, the COVID-19 effects, the fact that we had the lockdown, the fact that there was so much cash crunch, there was so much of purchasing power declined significantly last year. All this puts together seriously affects their bottom line.
I agree with you. At least at the AAA end of the market, which Nestle actually plays, by the way, when you talk about the executive level. Chima, you were talking about other earnings very quickly. We're about to touch on that. I'm sure you're
I'm about to touch on MTN. Excuse me? Oh, okay. I was about to touch on MTN's earnings. Just briefly touch on their revenue going up 15%. I don't think it's come as a surprise to anybody that MTN's revenue has grown at as high as 15%. I'm just looking at the GDP figures for Q4 alone, and how, or for the whole year, even during the pandemic, and how the telecom sector has been able to lift the or at least prop the economy somewhat. I think everybody should have expected that see such impressive earnings or impressive results from MTN. Like we know, everybody were on a Zoom call. I'm using a particular network to make this call. Everybody had to increase their usage of data, and for some of those that were not so data big, increased calls to reach out to their loved ones while staying safe in isolation and whatnot. So we saw this for other companies as well. I think Airtel released their results, and we saw this play out for them as well. And so I don't think that this is very surprising at all. I think it's very expected.
Thank you.
If I may touch on...
Please go ahead. Go ahead, Chima.
Oh, no, I was going to touch on another story, so if you want to touch on the MTN story.
Yes, I wanted Temple to quickly talk about the Tom and Jerry relationship between SEC and the NSC and the SEC and Oando, at least for the last 4 years.
Well, it's very surprising. We understand that the judge said that he doesn't have the jurisdiction for the case to be presented before it, or to be decided on last week Friday, and so he referred them to the IST, the Investment and Securities Tribunal, which is where you typically have investment cases in Nigeria and conflicts when it comes to money matters, especially in the capital market space. And now they are, Oando is saying that it is also going forward to challenge this particular move, that they actually misunderstood or misconceived, the judge misconceived its case, although they didn't use the term judge, because that's very, very sensitive. They said the case was misconceived, and that they are appealing the case, and they are applying for stay of action on the whole injunction and the case. Now we're going to have to see how that pans out. Perhaps this at the end of the day will also give some other relevance to the IST, which has been looking for a way to have all other money market cases brought to its purview, so that it will be the tribunal or lower courts to be handling such cases. This is still a capital market case. Ordinarily, this should have even come to the IST, but just because it has to do with regulators, that's why we are saying the back and forth at this point in time. But at the end of the day, I think one of the fears that Oando has is the fact that they will go back to a regulator that has somewhat tight relationship with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and that is where the problem is.
Yes, okay, yes. Chima, you want to weigh in very quickly before we move on?
Well, I would say I agree with Temple. I'm not exactly sure what the peculiarities of the station is, because looking at the accusation from the SEC on Oando and how the peculiarities of the case, the financial, it is between participants and participants in the financial services sector and the SEC seems like a financial services matter, and that is what the Investment and Securities Tribunal was set up for. So I think it would be a very closed case to say that the IST should handle this deliberation or should judge the matter. But we remain to see why Oando is trying to shift it back to the FHC, and I guess we'll just wait for more updates on that.
Yes, I think we'll just wait. I'm supposed to be, I'm impartial in this, but I will tell you, like both of you said, if there is a body set up to adjudicate in matters relating to any part of the financial system set up under the law, I think everybody who operates in the market should be willing and ready to go through that route first. If you disagree with that, you can take it all the way up to the Supreme Court, but try not to go through the IST and try to go through the Federal High Court first, and sidelining the IST. Personally, my personal take, I don't agree with that. Let's talk about Southern Africa. President Ramaphosa was beating his chest last night, talking about the virus pandemic response so far, and says the country is moving towards level 2 and level 1 of lockdown easing. Nigeria will get its first COVID-19 vaccine tomorrow. The government is tweeting fast and furious about that. If that happens, as been tweeted by the official Twitter handle of the Nigerian government, will be the second African country to get a virus vaccine under the COVAX arrangement. Ramaphosa spoke about the economy. Moody says South Africa lowering its deficit will not stop the country's debt from climbing, despite the whole chest-beating budget 2020 presentation last week by Tito Mboweni, the finance minister. Private sector growth in South Africa slows to 3.66% in the month we just finished. South African JSE reported the bumper 2020 numbers, revenue up 13%, EBITDA nearly 20%. And Capitec is paying a preference share dividend, 289.26 South African cents for 6 months ended. Temple, where do you want to come in through first? Through the virus vaccine or through the private sector credit in South Africa?
The vaccine is king at this point, Bosen. I mean, it was good that
I agree.
Ramaphosa actually spoke about this yesterday. It was good that he spoke. He's the president, as opposed to what we see in some other countries where the presidents don't say nothing. It's just the governors that address the issues of COVID-19 and the vaccines. Yes, he spoke yesterday and he give more explanations under the alert level number 1, which began yesterday night actually in South Africa. Coffee has now been shifted or adjusted from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. Religious and social gatherings as well as political gathering can now hold with minimum or maximum of 100 people. Indoor gatherings must be restricted as well to 100 or less people. Outdoor gatherings must be around 250, and all of the COVID-19 measures must be put in place, which is nice. It's fine at the end of the day. One of the good things that the private sector, which person is more interested in, was one of the issues that he also addressed, and that's the sale of alcohol. He said that alcohol can actually be sold. So all the Heineken, all the
I don't want them killing the brewers.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, this affects the investors, and it is
consumer goods. Chima
so
doesn't want anybody to hurt.
Guys.
If you come after Chima's sector, she's going to come after you. That's the whole story. Consumer goods space.
Exactly. So,
Chima, what do you say?
Yeah.
I was wondering the authority I have to go after anybody, but I agree with you. Please leave the sector alone. I think it is a very welcome development. I know on this show we saw the results of ShopRite, where it said alcohol sales for its alcohol sales had dipped significantly, and I attributed this to the ban on alcohol sales. So I think it's welcome development. I'm sure it has something to do with the vaccine that they're getting now, because initially it was banned to combat the spread of the virus. So now that we're having vaccines, there really isn't any need to ban alcohol sales anymore. So okay, everybody carry on. So I think it's a welcome development.
Great. Temple, you still want to weigh in on any other story in Southern African space?
Yes, I think one of the key stories that will be challenging to Nigeria at this point is the that will make the Nigerian market to be quite jealous is that of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The full year 2020 numbers are out. It tells you that yes, this
Yes.
market is demutualized already, and that is what Nigerian Stock Exchange is running after at this point in time. We hope that they'll be able to achieve that this year, so that investors will also be able to invest in the stock exchange and be able to watch out for, revenues, bottom line, top line, EBITDA earnings for JSE, which came in at 1.06 billion rands this time. I mean, it is a reliable investment at the end of the day, if you ask me. A lot of retail and corporate investors will be willing to invest in the Nigerian Stock Exchange by the time it is demutualized. It's a major market to watch. It's a major space to watch, and I'm sure Oscar and Yema
Sorry
at
to
this
watch,
point,
yes.
this morning, will be jealous about this.
I know, Chima, I'm sure the Vertiva Capital is also watching the NSC demutualization, aren't you?
Yeah, I do not have enough updates on that for now, but I can just speak to how the JSE, like I agree with what Temple has said, and how the increase good performance from the JSE would make the those involved in the demutualization of the NSE faster at work, because it shows that when this happens, investors will be more willing to participate in the activities of the NSE itself, given that it can be a profitable business. Well, it is a profitable business and it can provide returns for investors. So I think investors will be much more interested in this, particularly as you can see results from the JSE. And we'll just continue to watch the ongoing progress of Nigeria's stock exchange.
I agree with both of you, because last year the NSC Osha Index went up 50%. Imagine if the stock exchange itself is demutualized. I know his own return last year will be fantastic as well as a listed company. If the entire market went up 50%, Temple, isn't it?
True, agreed. Both if at the end of the day we're able to have this done, it's something that that the stock exchange that's like the umbrella for a lot of other companies. There's no how profits won't rev up, whether you have a decline in all the. I mean, you have transactions, whether you buy or you sell, that will bring up some fluidity in the space for the exchange. So if at the end of the day I have investments in Nestle and my expectations from Nestle at the end of the year didn't just come through, what will come from the stock exchange as a bigger entity is something that will make up for that loss from the corporate. It's what we need, and it's the way to go. We can't afford to lose that in 2021 and 2022. Also, you have bigger companies like Dangote coming upstream with the refinery. At the end of the day, all of this will bring some liquidity into the market. You need some in and out, some inroad and entry and exit points, a better one with the demutualization of the stock exchange. This will be consummated.
I agree with you. I completely agree with both of you. Let's cap it up with the North African markets. And the pharmaceuticals and medical space, healthcare is still getting a whole lot of attention. And you can see that 9 pharmaceuticals reporting net profit, even though that's declined to about 62.4 million Egyptian shillings for the period under review. But Speed Hospital and Tawassa Holdings buying the Alexandra Medical, the whole medical pharmaceuticals taking the front burner. No thanks to the pandemic, or thank you to the pandemic virus on the African continent, bringing healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and medical organizations into the front burner. Morocco's central bank says the bank's credit were higher 4.1% year on year against 4.5% in December. That's very good news. Bank of Africa, one of the largest commercial bank in Francophone-speaking West Africa, all the way to the northern part of the continent, has reported a consolidated NBI of 13.7 billion dirhams. That's for the unit that is located in Morocco. Temple, your final word?
True. So we've been hearing about this deal for some time across the Northern African space. I mean, I've been following the Northern African business or capital markets space in recent time, because there's something I'm having to do with them in Egypt at this point. So we've been hearing about this deal for a while. Tawasol is a company that actually has a 25.9% stake in NMC, and they announced the deal, their alliance with Speed Medical a few weeks ago. The market actually reacted a bit to that. Now, at the end of the day, we are going to see the exit of some investors from the NMC, and it will increase the stake of Tawasol at the end of the day. I hear again that it's going to amount to some kind of a name change. I don't know how that will, how true that is, but at the end of the day, what we know is that the corporate markets, the capital markets, or the financial markets in Egypt, as we've been discussing in recent times, has opened up for seamless entry and exit of investors. So if you're able to come in with some £50,000 as a retail investor or something, you can easily exit once your investment has accrued to a particular level. Once you've hit the level of appreciation, you're good to go.
Temple, don't tell me you're falling in love with the pharaohs.
I am.
What's going on?
And the mummies.
Chima, you better follow the money. That's what I will advise. It looks like some things are going on up north there. Give me your 1 minute or 30 seconds take on the market this week, Chima. How do you think investors should play the consumer goods space with this Nestle's below the belt earnings?
So, speaking specifically to Nestle, I think I mentioned earlier that I don't think that the market will react too badly to that. One is that although the dividend yield is low, I don't think it is as low as, say, in an NB, for example, or I think it can still compete with the yields in the fixed income market. Apart from that, the holders of Nestle do not really move with the market, move with such earnings as such. They are usually long-term holders, so I don't think that would see a lot of change or a lot of decline in Nestle's share price or a lot of activity. Although I don't buy that we would see such. For the rest of the market, I should just recap that last week we saw sort of bloodshed in the market. It was everywhere was red, apart from the oil and gas sector, which is coincidentally the biggest earner year to date. It's about 17% year to date. I think if you go back to last year, it was probably the worst performing sector, and I don't think you can't be surprised why people are now interested in the sector. We're seeing the oil price is now as high as $60-something per barrel, so it kind of bodes well for the sector. Another confirmation will be Seplat's result. I've not really seen Seplat's result. I think it just came in while during this session, so it would be nice to see, although we don't expect to see the improvement except but in Q1, it would be nice to see how they fared for the whole of 2020 and how investors would position. So maybe that is something that can affect the sector in this session going into today and maybe the rest of the week. But overall, sentiment toward that sector has remained positive, and I think it will continue to remain positive going by what we're seeing in the international crude oil market. For the other sectors, I think we'll just continue to see here and there movements. You may continue to see bearish movements because, as we know, in the fixed income markets, yields are starting to rise. So investors are not really flooding the markets with their funds anymore. They are trying to be cautious to try to gain back or go back into the fixed income market and play well with the yields. So I think we should see a mixed sentiment for the rest of the week.
Thank you so much, Chima Okadike, head of consumer goods analysis at Misr Capital Management. Have a great week ahead. Temple Ashaju of Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you so much, Temple. Both of you have a great week ahead. Thank you very much for our viewers. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.